Round 2. Ferrante versus Touka. Ferrante ran and hid among a cluster of duelists. He slipped into the shadows and took many twists and turns to reach his camp at a lonely corner along the massive wall, half shrouded by thick rose bushes. Upon reaching it, he slumped against the wall. His bronze armor scraped slightly against it as he dropped into a seated position. He fled from the disaster of his first round after guards arrived to manage to restore some order. As soon as he saw an opening in the hectic crowd, he bolted and fled here. That was too close, he thought to himself. He froze when he heard footsteps nearby. Did you hear? There's some kind of panic at the arena. No one knows how it started, so they don't suspect him yet, Ferrante thought with relief. He relaxed and let out a shaky breath. Now he just needed to rest. His pendant, the only thing keeping his hex at bay, was secured close to his chest. It was days before Ferrante finally emerged from his self-isolation. Hunger and need for supplies drove him into town in the earliest hours before even half the shops were open. Even though the incident at the castle was pushed aside for newer topics, he kept his head down and stayed out of everyone's way. As he walked around, he picked up bits and pieces about the town. Ferrante was surprised to hear this place had been besieged by a dragon not too long ago. The Golden Knight was the one who slew it and restored the town with all the gold that had spilled from its guts. He was certain now he could find what he was looking for here: judgment. After making sure his tiny camp was well hidden and his pendant, now with a new cord, secured, Ferrante ventured out into the castle grounds. It was busy, with people looking for opponents left and right. He noticed a large group of duelists nearby. All were eagerly trying to get to something. Despite his initial plan to avoid large crowds, curiosity took control. Carefully, he wandered over to the mass. He planned to hang in the back until he could see what they were excited about. Unfortunately, luck chose to abandon him at that moment. As soon as he stepped near the group, he was practically pulled inside in an almost comedic way as people moved, shifted, and shoved through the limited space. Ferrante found himself in front of a series of ballot boxes. It seemed like, instead of trying to pick and choose opponents, this time around, a group of duelists decided to pick names at random for the next round. Ferrante was immediately intrigued by this. He eventually placed his own name in a ballot box and waited. Over time, names would be pulled, and those two fighters would enter the ring and begin their duel. Ferrante felt the anxiety from his last round returning, but he steeled himself and was determined to continue. He had decided this hate hex was not going to stop him now. At some point, he heard his name being called. As he stepped out into the ring once again, he saw his opponent on the other side with their back to him, wearing a long hooded cloak, waving confidently at the crowd. The announcer called for the battle to begin, addressing Ferrante and his opponent, Touka. Ferrante tilted his head. That name sounded. His opponent turned, shedding the cloak as they did. This revealed a young person with a long flowing red scarf, a golden bow slung over their back, and a sturdy-looking quiver full of arrows. They waved, standing tall and confident, and Ferrante felt the air leave his lungs as he saw their face. It was a young lady. He froze in place just outside the ring. "What are you waiting for? Get in there!" a voice shouted behind him before a knee in his lower back roughly pushed him in, sending him stumbling out into the ring. Ferrante looked back, but the magic shield was already in place. Before him, Touka made a few stretches and took up her bow. Ferrante stepped back half a pace. He just couldn't fight a lady. He knew that things had changed in the land. There are tons of skilled female fighters now. He himself just hoped never actually fight one. Touka had already taken up her bow and notched an arrow. "Hey, try and take this seriously, okay?" She fired a shot. Ferrante barely had time to dodge before he felt another one graze past his leg. Touka laughed as she readied another arrow. "Almost had you there." She was fast. This was going to be a challenge. What came next was a series of dodging, leaping, and ducking as arrow after arrow rained down on him. Ferrante ran forward, shield up, only to have a barrage of arrows force him back again. The crowd cheered, excited to see such skill. Ferrante pulled his sword out, but didn't wield it yet. Touka notched another arrow, aimed, and then a flash of silver light blinded her for a moment. The archer shook off the shock and quickly went back to targeting her opponent. Strangely, every shot she took hit its mark, yet her arrows seemed to do no damage. Ferrante continued to run and dodge around her. Touka growled in frustration as she gave chase. Why won't you just quit? What she didn't realize was that she was chasing a convincing illusion. The flash from Ferrante's lantern shield had altered her perception, making her think her opponent was still in front of her. The real Ferrante had been moving around behind her while she tried to hit the air. His idea was to seize her and push her out of the ring. He came up behind her and reached out to grasp her shoulders. The archer suddenly whipped around and smashed a golden bow into the sentry's head. Despite his helmet taking the brunt of the blow, he still staggered. Even when distracted, Touka heard the scrape of metal behind her and responded instinctively. She then swept her bow down and hit the sentry's ankle, and Ferrante found himself flat on his back. His sword clattered out of reach. He threw his shield arm up and blocked a strike aimed at his face. He tried to push himself away from her, but felt his shield being grabbed. Get back here, Touka yelled as she yanked. Ferrante choked out a faint cry as white-hot agony ripped through his left arm. This was the result when his jailers decided to use a form of sadistic punishment and had his armor heated and forced on his arm. The torture tactic had left his armor partially fused to his flesh. The sudden pain caused him to flail, and quite by accident, he kicked out, and his foot hit Touka's knee, nearly dislocating it. She gasped and let go, limping back and checking her leg for damage. Ferrante saw the opportunity. He sprang up, grabbed, and lifted her. Instantly, she started to struggle in his grasp. Put me down, you... She was deposited, almost gently, outside the ring. She stood in confusion as the announcer declared her ring out. Ferrante didn't stay to be congratulated. He was already off the arena. He grabbed his blade and shoved his way through the crowd before the announcer could even finish. Ferrante dragged himself back to his simple, isolated camp. He slumped down, panting and feeling horrible. Guilt and shame burned him more than his throbbing arm. With his mind and emotions in turmoil, he was taken back to the past, back when he felt something similar that he tried so hard to forget. Closing his eyes, he could smell the smoke before his mind fully dragged him back into his memories, the last ones from centuries ago. Fire burned several buildings around him as he looked down at a body sprawled out on the cobblestone road. He recognized it. It was one of the kin of that brute who sat on the throne, and the one who stole Ferrante's betrothed, his childhood friend Bella. The hilt of a jeweled dagger protruded from its neck. Ferrante recognized it instantly. He designed it himself and personally handed it as a betrothal gift to Bella a year ago. Then everything fell into a blur and time sped up. The dagger was wrenched from the body, cleaned and stowed under the sentry's breastplate. The next moment, he stumbled onto a stone bridge. The fast-flowing black waters below had already claimed many lost objects. A light dagger made from small hands was no exception. He glanced around. No one was in sight. There was a flash of silver in the dim moonlight, a faint splash, and then it was over. Ferrante turned and dashed in the direction of the battle. His mind and heart were in complete mess as he knew deep down he had done something wrong, but vowed to never speak of it. He couldn't have known he himself would be accused of this death. Ferrante's eyes snapped open as he forced himself out of the past. He remembered now. He did something he couldn't take back, but it was worth it, right? Ferrante realized he never knew Bella's fate or whether she even survived the attack that day. He wanted to believe she did and that her descendants were living well in this new era. With a deep breath, he pushed the thought to the back of his mind. He was too exhausted to dwell on it now. He looked up at the darkening sky. 2 rounds were done. He just had to keep going. He had to get rid of this hex, even if it meant he would ultimately be blamed for everything. Leaning against the wall, He shut his eyes, hoping for a dreamless rest.